Śrī Gauranga Gunanubanana Vidho Tadhyasamidharnitam Papatrapanikrintanam Tanamitam Govinda Gana Amritayi Śrī Gauranga Gunanubanana Vidho Tadhyasamidharnitam Papatrapanikrintanam Tanamitam Govindagana-amritam Anandambuddhivardhanam Kanipanam Kaivalyaniswaratam Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghujugam Śrī Jīva Gopalakum Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tana Param Premamritam Panidhi Akvatur Namase Samannalapati Sani Tadatu Chama Bhuttvadina Ganesakaru Karanaya Kopina Kanthasitau Krishna Kirtana Ganana Tanapano
Kuma Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Adunulambito Bhujo Kanakabhatatu Sankirtanaya Kapitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunabhataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gurudai Pushpavanto Chitra Sangdo Tamamuno Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhayo Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subalapriyo Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye.
Shri Gaudiya Vaishnav Guru Parampara Ki Jai, Śrī Jīva Goswami Ki Jai, Sat Sandarbhas Ki Jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Glorious devotees, we will continue with our discussion of Srila Jiva Goswami's Sat Sandarbhas. We're doing a quick overview of the Paramātmā Sandarbha, and we will continue where we left off with a discussion of the ontology of Paramātmā, and then go on to the ontology or the truths related to the jiva. Again, just as a reminder, all of the first three Sandarbhas are based upon unpacking of this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yas jnanamadvayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti subjate. Learned transcendentalists know the absolute truth. Who know this absolute truth? Call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramātmā, or Bhagavan. So continuing, with the Anuchetas that we left off with, which was a discussion of the Bhagavan, the first Purusha. I'll read the Anucheta as before, as in the case of Bhagavan, the prerequisite for his Paramātma's manifestation should be understood as bhakti alone. That manifestation is threefold, as is said in the Naradiya Tantra. Bhagavan Vishnu has three forms, each called the Purusha, or the immanent self. The first, Mahavishnu, is he who sets in motion the total material energy, Mahatattva. The second is Garbhodakshai Vishnu, who is situated within the egg-like or womb-like universe. And the third is Kshirodakshai Vishnu, who is eminent within the heart of every living being. He who intuitively knows these three is liberated from conditional existence. This Anucheta is rather long, so we've just taken out some select portions for review and insight into the nature of Paramātmā, the ontology of Paramātmā, what is the science behind that results from the revelation of one who has fully identified themselves through realization with Paramātmā. Not that they become Paramātmā, but when we say self-identification, we mean that one enters into a state of understanding which exceeds a filtering of information through the mind-body complex, generally referred to as revelation, samadhi, in different ways. The progressive transcendentalist experiences the transcendental reality. So Anucheta again, some select portion here. Bhagavan Vishnu is also known as Sankarshan, and Mahavishnu is found in Brahma Samhita. The effulgent eternal Bhagavan Sambhu, Vasudeva, or Mahanarayan, the Lord of Vaikuntha, is Krishna's causal agent, linga, in the matter of generating the world. And Mahavishnu Sankarshan, the Lord of the cosmos, appeared within that causal agency, linga. So it's a little technical here, and we're going to unpack a bit of it so that we can understand the point that Jiva is making, which, as we discussed in our last class regarding this Paramātmā Sandarbha, one of the unique features of Jiva Goswami's contribution to the understanding of the nature of the supreme absolute truth in his person feature was that there is a distinct distinction between the Supreme Lord and his various manifestations. That distinction is understood through the philosophical terminology of Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, meaning simultaneously one and different. So similarly, the Supreme Lord is one with, of course, and somewhat different from all of the various manifestations which come forth from him. So this verse from Brahma Samhita is giving us some glimpse into that simultaneous one and different distinction. So there is a Mahanarayan, the Lord of Vaikuntha, and in the Brahma Samhita verse, it's saying is his, Krishna's, meaning Krishna, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam, the original supreme personality of Godhead, the source of all manifestations. So Narayan is an expansion of Krishna in Golok, and he's known as Bhagavan Sambhu. He's also known as Vasudev. He's also known as Mahanarayan. And he is a causal agent, linga, in the matter of generating the world. And we will unpack this terminology so that we can better understand the use of the word linga or causal agent. And Mahavishnu, Sankarshan, the Lord of the cosmos, appeared within that causal agency, linga. So now we're seeing that we are being introduced to three distinct manifestations of the Supreme Lord. Krishna, the original, who resides in his own abode. Then from him, we have manifestation of the Lord of Vaikuntha, Narayan, in this case, distinguished as Mahanarayan, or Vasudev of the Sankarshan, the first quadruple expansion. And then we also have Mahavishnu Sankarshan, who's the Lord of the cosmos, or the original agent for the manifestation of the material world. And now we're coming into the understanding of the Paramātmā feature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Jiva also writes in this Anucheta, it is necessary to explain the word linga from Brahma Samhita that we just quoted in accordance with the Vishnu Purana statement. This entire cosmic energy is situated in 1/100th millionth part of his part. The pronoun his refers to the supreme form of Bhagavan, Sri Govinda, and the potency to manifest the Purusha avatars belongs to him alone. So the original cause, the source of all these manifestations is coming from Govinda, Bhagavan, the original Lord Sri Krishna in Golok. And the entire cosmic energy, we can just get a glimpse into how magnificent and how much energy is there in the various Shaktis coming from Krishna, in that this verse from the Vishnu Purana is stating that 100th millionth part of his part is the entire cosmic energy. The entire cosmos or material manifestation is just a fraction of his energy. Now we can see this basically from two angles. We can see it from the perspective of Aishvarya, in that the Lord has so much energy, so much Shakti, that the material manifestation is practically insignificant in comparison to the entirety of his Shaktis. So if the entire material cosmic manifestation is a 100 millionth part of his Shaktis, how much must be that Vaikuntha atmosphere and all that is contained therein, and all of the various manifestations coming from his personality, his personal forms, and also those separated forms, which are of the marginal nature, or the Tatastha-sakti, which are coming from the Paramātmā feature of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Now we can look at also from the bhava aspect that the entire cosmic manifestation is coming forth from a desire, a compassionate desire on the part of Sri Krishna through his various manifestations. So just one part of this loving compassion that the Lord has can manifest the entire cosmic creation. And imagine all that is contained in that love of the Lord to manifest the material manifestation. That how great is that bhava coming from Krishna himself. Jiva continues in this Anucheta, a special part of that causal potency of Sri Govinda is known as Sambhu, Vasudeva or Mahanarayan, who is called the causal agent Linga, comparable to that causal potency Lingam Iva, because he is the agency through which the Purusha avatars appear. In other words, the term Linga, denoting a portion of Sri Govinda, is the basis of the primary meaning of the word Sambhu. Linga thus refers to a special portion of Bhagavan alone, as understood from the above context. So the true agency by which there is a material manifestation is coming through from Sri Govinda, the original personality of Godhead, to his Vasudeva manifestation or Mahanarayan. And because this manifestation of Govinda is that causal, works in that causal capacity, he is referred to as Sambhu. So some commentary to kind of unpack this. Jiva Goswami affirms that bhakti alone is instrumental in the manifestation of Paramātmā also. So as I said, the little bit of bhakti that is there can create a whole material manifestation. It's some small portion of Lord Krishna's Shaktis. So it's also required in order to even understand and appreciate the Paramātmā feature of the Lord, a little bhakti is required. In fact, a little bhakti is required in order for us to understand and appreciate all the features of the Lord, Brahman, Paramātmā, or Bhagavan, or the various unlimited manifestations of Bhagavan, which we will dive deeply into when we get to the Krishna Sandarbha after we complete this overview. May be raised. If Paramātmā manifests only for the sake of his devotees, how could the creation proceed, since there would be no devotees prior to creation? The answer is that Paramātmā evolves the cosmos for the sake of those devotees who could not attain the completion stage of devotion in the previous cycle of creation and are lying dormant within the body of Paramātmā, Mahavishnu. At the end of a creation cycle, the cosmos is dissolved back into the unmanifested state of matter, prakṛti. At this time, the jivas, along with prakriti, remain in an inactive state within the body of Mahavishnu. When it is time for a new creative cycle to begin, he manifests the universes. So, as we see here in this commentary, and as we'll see in the ending Anuchetas of the Paramātmā Sandarbha, the Gaudiya viewpoint, as expressed in this Paramātmā Sandarbha by Śrīla Jīva Goswami, is the entirety of the creative tendency on the part of the Supreme Lord is there in order to facilitate the further development in loving relationship of his devotees. Here in the commentary, it's pointed out those specific devotees who did not reach perfection in the current cycle of the material manifestation. This is quite an extraordinary viewpoint to look at the material world in such a devotional way, and the entirety of it being there simply to facilitate devotees. But there's a unique characteristic of that, is there not? The fact that devotees themselves, walking in the world, facilitate devotion which touches the heart of other jivas, and thereby provides opportunity for them to enter into a practice which will also lead to their spiritual perfection. So therefore, the cycles, there is an unending cycle of samsara on the individual basis and also on the cosmic basis. And the material universes, therefore, will always come into being based upon this appreciation of the fact that bhakti is the driving force behind the manifestation of the material universes on all levels. Continuing into the little bit of a further unpacking of this linga idea. In the Brahma Samhita, again, this verse that we read a little earlier, 5.8, Sambhu is referred to as the causal agent of Sri Krishna, the original Bhagavan. For this reason, Sambhu is called linga. So this whole use of the terminology Sambhu and linga is centered around this concept of causal agent. It's something that is used, and that will be explained here as we go on, as an agency, as an indicator. Etymologically, the word linga means an indicator. A linga is that which discloses an object or a hidden meaning. For example, in Nyaya, smoke is known as the linga for fire because by seeing smoke, one can infer the presence of fire. In this sense, smoke can be said to be causal in regard to the inference of fire. Therefore, linga means an indicator, symbol, or cause. Sambhu is the linga of Krishna. Now, again, remember, Sambhu here is Mahanarayan in Vaikuntha, and the Sambhu of Mahanarayan in Vaikuntha is Garbhodakshai Vishnu. I'm sorry, not Garbo, Karnadakshai Vishnu, the original Vishnu from which all the Paramātmā manifestations come. So it starts out with one manifestation, and then he spreads himself out further. So first on the causal ocean, and from him, his pores come forth unlimited universes, which he again enters into. So he enters into those universes as Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and those universes are populated with jivas, and he enters into them and through all the material nature as Kshirodakshai Vishnu. So Sambhu is the linga of Krishna in both senses. He is his causal agent in the matter of creation, and he also indicates the existence of his source, Sri Krishna. So really, this terminology of linga is pointing to an understanding that if we look carefully to the manifestation of a material cosmos, although we don't see it coming directly forth from Krishna, Govinda, Swayam Bhagavan in his personal transcendental atmosphere of Golok, we don't experience it that way. Still, we can understand that he is the personality behind which the entire material manifestation comes forth. And he uses for that purpose his other manifestation in Vaikuntha, Mahanarayan, the first of the Chaturvyuha. Continuing here with this explanation, just a little bit more. Sambhu is known as linga, a causal agent comparable to that causal potency, lingam eva, which manifests the Purusha avatar. In the same way, the word yoni, commonly womb, does not mean the female organ, but refers instead to pradhan, as in Bhagavad Gita 14:3. The total material substance, called Brahman, pradhan, is my own womb into which I sow the seed of living beings. Mama yonir mahad brahma. Krishna embodies the male principle, and so does not have a yoni in the conventional sense. The words linga and yoni both signify a cause or source. This kind of usage is known as parokshavad, or indirect expression. So these terms, linga and yoni, in a material context, would refer to the male and female creative organs. Well, they're just, when applied to the material manifestation and the impregnation of all the jivas into that material prakṛti, or energy of the Supreme Lord, Shakti, though the terminology may be there, we may see it, lingam and yoni, womb and creative organ, but it's not the same. It's just it's giving us an expression which we can relate to from our vantage point of material nature, seeing the way material nature manifests additional living entities. So Krishna, he has both those potencies. The primary meaning of the word Sambhu is a special part of Mahabhagavan Sri Govinda, and not Bhagavan Shiva. Etymologically, Sambhu means he from whom Sam means liberation or bhakti ensues. So Sam, when we look at the word Sambhu, now etymologically it means Sam, from whom liberation or bhakti ensues. The word sama is used in the sense of bhakti in the Bhagavatam. Sama is the state of the wisdom faculty, buddhi, when it is exclusively fixed on me, Sri Krishna. Samuman nistita buddhi, from the 11th canto. The Vasistadvaita Kosha glosses the word Sambhu as Narayan, who is the source of the cosmos and the bestower of liberation. This very Sambhu is called Maheshwar and Purusha, Brahma Samhita. It is from him that the first Paramātmā, called Mahavishnu, manifests. From all this, it is concluded that Sambhu Narayan is an intermediary between Krishna and Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu, or Karnadaksha Vishnu, the original Paramātmā, or the macrocosmic feature of Paramātmā, Mahavishnu does not contact the material energy directly, does so through his conduit in the form of Shiva. Thus, Shiva, or Sambhu, becomes the causal agent or linga of Mahavishnu. So even Mahavishnu has a linga or causal agent, and that is Lord Shiva, who actually does contact the material energy. Thus, it is understood that there are two Sambhus. One is Narayan himself, and the other is Shiva. We'll continue here with a little bit more of the ontology of the Paramātmā before we go on to the ontology of the Jiva. So now let's look at this second Purusha. The first Purusha is that Mahavishnu, from whom all the universes come forth, as perspiration would come forth from one's pores. The second Purusha is the indweller, antaryami, of the aggregate of all jivas, samasti jiva, as indicated in the statement, such as, after creating the world, he entered into it. Because this form is involved with the universes, which are manifold, this Purusha has numerous divisions, among which are sometimes included Pradyumna, who is the indweller of the subtle or psychic dimension of being, and Aniruddha, who is the indweller of the gross or physical dimension of being. From this, it can be concluded that the original Sankarshan and the other supracosmic forms of Vasudeva, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, who are situated in Mahavaikuntha, are the whole of which these cosmic forms are the parts. Furthermore, the cosmic forms of Vasudeva and so on, who are the presiding deities of pure intellection, chitta, and the other psychic functions, are parts of these original forms. A little technical here, but in this Anucheta, Jiva Goswami is putting forth the concept for us to appreciate that the second the manifestations of the Purusha that enter into the universe are a second manifestation of the original quadruple manifestation of the Supreme Godhead from Vaikuntha, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Those supracosmic forms also have their expansions, and those expansions enter into each of the individual global shells of the universes. or the second manifestation of the Purusha. And then we come to the third Purusha. The third Purusha, so the second Purusha is Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Garbhodakshai Vishnu, a manifestation of Garbhodakshai Vishnu, or the Paramātmā, resides within every single universe. And from that manifestation of Garbhodakshai Vishnu springs forth the lotus upon which the Brahma, who is the creator of the universe and the grandsire of the population of the universe, he springs forth. And of course, those manifestations of Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are facilitators and of the capacities that are there within every individual universe. Now we come to the third Purusha, which is the indweller of the individual being, as described in statements such as the following. There are two birds who are ever related and who thus share an intimate friendship sitting on the same tree. Of these two, one eats the pipala fruit, which is full of divergent taste, while the other shines in his own glory, merely witnessing without eating. Because of the innumerable divisions of jivas, are variegated divisions of the third Purusha. Continuing in this same vein, but jumping ahead to the seventh Anucheta, Bhagavan Shri Krishna instructed Uddhava in a similar manner. Just as the moon, although one is reflected in numerous pots filled with water, similarly the Supreme Self alone is present as the self, ātmā, interior to all beings, and the bodies too are of one essence. There is only one Supreme Self, Paramātmā, interior to all living beings, bhuteshu, the jivas. He is not implicated in these bodies like the living entities. To assure us of this, Krishna says here, Paramātmā is present as the self, ātmā, meaning that he is situated exclusively in his own swarup, or intrinsic being. The word bhutani here refers to the bodies of the jivas. These two have a single essence due to having him alone as their common cause. So this understanding of the third Purusha, this indwelling Paramātmā, is further explained here in two different ways, as two birds sitting in the same tree of the material body, and also as the indwelling Paramātmā being reflected within innumerable pots of water, which would be within as the indwelling self within unlimited jivas, as the indwelling ātmā. From there is a further explanation given by Jiva as to the guna avatar manifestations within the universes, so that we can see that this is a further outpouring of the Shakti, of the Paramātmā feature of the Supreme Lord. After thus establishing the various forms of the one Purusha, Karnadakshai Vishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, Kshirodakshai Vishnu, his portions, amsas, will now be further described. So that Paramātmā feature also has his features, which pour forth from him. His portions are of two types. So coming from Paramātmā, we have self-same manifestations, swamsa, and differentiated manifestations, vibhimamsa. It will be described that the vibhimamsa are the living beings, the jivas, who are of the nature of the intermediary potency, Tatastha-sakti, or in other words, the potency situated on the dividing line of and mediating between the intrinsic and extrinsic potencies of Bhagavan. The swamsas are of various types, with divisions of guna avatar, lila avatar, and so on. Of these, the lila avatars and others will be described in Sri Krishna Sandarbha due to the relevance of the context there. So the lila avatars, Jiva Goswami is going to elaborate upon those manifestations of the Supreme Lord in the Krishna Sandarbha in a more comprehensive manner. Now we come to an introduction of Jivatatva. So we have a very, very broad overview of the Paramātmā feature of the Supreme Absolute Truth from the beginning, the Ontology of Paramātmā in the Paramātmā Sandarbha. This is further unpacked and explained there, and our overview is just to give us a glimpse of some of the detailed knowledge that is contained therein. Even those areas where we went into some detail are simply small portions of specific anuchetas that dealt with those subject matters. So there's much, much knowledge to be gained there as to an understanding of this manifestation of the Godhead. So now we go on to the Jivatatva. So the Jivatatva is one of the potencies coming forth from Paramātmā. Jiva writes in his 19th Anucheta, the Jiva, or the internal self, is counted, or the individual self is counted among the attendants of Paramātmā. Its extrinsic characteristic, Tatastha-laksana, was stated earlier, namely that it is the conditional knower of the presentational field of its own body-mind complex. The intrinsic characteristics, Swarup-laksana, of the Jiva were imparted by Śrī Jīva Muni, a very senior teacher of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya in the line of Sri Ramanujacharya, who has followed the Padma Purana, where it is said in the course of explaining Pranava Om. Now we are going to read an extensive explanation of the intrinsic characteristics of the Jiva. Extrinsically, well, it's unlimited. The modes of material nature are continually influencing the Jiva, and his extrinsic characteristics give us the unlimited variegatedness that we experience within the material nature. Unlimited living entities can be seen there in many-fold divisions of material bodies, depending on the various influence of those modes of material natures on the Jiva. So extrinsically, we can see there's 8,400,000 species. What to speak of within any one of those 8,400,000 species? how many specific living entities are there. The varieties are countless. And the counting of those jivatmas within the Lord's external potency are themselves uncountable from our vantage point. But here, in this portion of the Paramātmā Sandarbha, we're going to talk about the ontology of the jiva, the intrinsic nature. What is the common, the characteristics of the jiva in its true nature, not in its nature when it allows itself to be influenced by the Lord's external energy, the Bahiranga Shakti, or Maya. So, Swarup Lakshana, these intrinsic characteristics. So first we're going to see how the Padma Purana lists those characteristics. And then we're going to see why, despite the explanation given in the Padma Purana, Jiva Goswami, for his elaboration of these intrinsic characteristics, chose to go with Sri Jamitri Muni's explanation and exposition on the characteristics of the internal characteristics, the Swarup Lakshana of the jiva. There's a specific reason he did that. So first, to the Padma Purana and its explanation of what's the nature of the internal nature of the jivatma. The letter M in Om signifies the jiva, the witness of the presentational field of the body, Kshetrajna, who is always dependent upon and subservient to the Supreme Self, Paramātmā. He is constitutionally a servant of Bhagavan Hari only and never of anyone else. He is the conscious substratum endowed with the attribute of knowledge. He is conscious and beyond matter. He is never born, undergoes no modification, is of one unchanging form, and situated in his own essential identity, Swarup. He is atomic, smaller, the smallest particle without any parts, eternal, pervasive of the body, and intrinsically of the nature of consciousness and bliss. He is the referent of the pronoun I, imperishable, the proprietor of the body, distinct from all other jivas and never ending. The jiva cannot be burnt, cut, wetted, or dried, and is not subject to decay. He is endowed with these and other attributes. He is indeed the irreducible remainder, Sesha, the integrated part of the complete whole, Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda. So this is a rather comprehensive explanation of the jiva in its essence. And then we go on to the verses of Jamatri Muni and what characteristics he brings out, which are the intrinsic nature of the jiva. Now, I'm not going to go over the exact verses. We've delineated here the 21 characteristics, and for the most part, they're the same as given in the Padma Purana, except for three notable differences. And those are, of these 21 characteristics, the 18th, 19th, and 20th. So it is because of Jamatri Muni's presentation of these specific characteristics that jiva elaborates on his explanation in the Paramātmā Sandarbha, as opposed to simply elaborating on the verse given from the Padma Purana. And those characteristics are that the jiva is endowed with knowership, cognitive awareness. He's endowed with agency, the ability to affect something, conation. And he's endowed with experiential capacity, affectivity. In other words, we experience the environment. We experience. So these are three characteristics that were not in the Padma Purana definition. So we're going to, as I said, this is an overview, and all Gaudiya Vaishnavas have been thoroughly schooled by Lord Krishna himself in his instructions to Arjuna as to the nature of the self. In the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, those first 6 chapters are talking about the nature of the jiva. So let us just go to a little bit of a more in-depth understanding of these 3 specific characteristics that Jiva thought were so important that would bring him to accepting the detailed explanation of Jamatri Muni. Of these characteristics from Jamatri Muni, the first, that the jiva, the ātmā, is not a god, a human, or any other species of life, was implied in the following verse. So he elaborates a little bit on in his 19th Anucheta. Just as the vital force, prana, remains unchanging as it accompanies the individual living being, jiva, in whatever different species it may appear, whether born from eggs, wombs, seeds, or perspiration, the ātmā is unchanging in the state of deep sleep. When the senses and ego are deactivated, then there is freedom from the subtle body, which is the cause of transformation. Yet upon awakening, the remembrance comes to us that we slept peacefully without awareness of anything. And this indicates that in deep sleep, the self is present as pure witness, devoid of the content of sensual, mental, or egoic awareness. So from this, little commentary here, and then entering a little deeper into this as time allows. To this point, Śrī Jīva has described the ontology of Paramātmā. In doing so, he's explained Paramātma's 3 manifestations as the supreme regulator of the metacosmo, the macrocosmo, and the microcosmo, and also his identity among the Trinity of gods as Vishnu, of the Trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Paramātmā is the regulator of the innumerable jivas and of the material nature, prakṛti. To understand the regulator, it is necessary to understand the regulated. Just as to understand a manager, one also needs to understand or to know his field of action. As such, realization of the jiva precedes that of Paramātmā. If we can fully understand the nature of our being, of the jiva, as ourself, both as seen with impressions and without, and sometimes the terminology is applied to the pure essence of our being is the ātmā. And once we take on upadhis or take on impressions from the material environment in which we inhabit, we're referred to as the jiva. So if you remember from our last discussion, this is one of the items that was put forth as being presented in the Paramātmā Sandarbha, this distinction between ātmā and jiva, how these terminologies are used to distinguish these different understandings. So maybe another way to understand that is the Swarup Lakshana, the internal characteristics of the jiva. When we look at the jiva simply from that vantage point of its intrinsic characteristic, that can be referred as the ātmā. And once we look to the jiva influenced by the mind-body complex, then this terminology of jiva is applied. Now, not all schools use these terminologies in this way, but we can certainly see that these terminologies are put forth at different times by different transcendentalists in order to convey varied meanings. A little deeper into this understanding. An object has two types of defining characteristics, laksana, called Tatastha, and Swarup. The purpose of defining the characteristics of an object is to distinguish it from others, both similar and dissimilar, in order to determine how to deal with it appropriately. Tatastha, extrinsic or incidental defining characteristics, are those that are identifiable as extraneous to the object being defined, which do not belong to its essential nature, but by which it is commonly recognized. Swarup characteristics are those that are part of the object itself, essential and intrinsic to it. The pure, unbound, unconditioned being is called the ātmā, whereas the conditioned being is called the jiva. The cause of conditioning is the beginningless ignorance, anadi avidya, of the self's real identity or swarup, which results in absorption in the mental modifications, chitta vritti. In this Anucheta, Śrī Jīva begins a description of the jiva's swarup. So now we go on to, we just did an overview of an earlier characteristic, which was common both in the Padma Paramātmā and the explanation of Jamatri Muni. Now we come on to the specifics of these three characteristics endowed with knowership, agency, and experiential capacity. Anucheta 35. The jiva is eternal, nitya, quality number 16, and unblemished, nirmala, quality 17, because it is intrinsically pure by nature. As demonstrated already, the pure knower of the presentational field merely witnesses these beginningless modifications of the impure actor, the mind. Moreover, by the very same statement, it is further shown that the capacity to know, jnatritva, quality number 18, also belongs even to the pure ātmā, by virtue of its being a knower of the presentational field, and its cognitive capacity being a natural attribute of the eternal self. And this cognitive capacity being a natural attribute of the eternal self is also eternal and thus does not undergo modifications. Jiva continues in the Anucheta, because the body is seen to have agency, prakṛti, quality 19, as a result of its relation with the individual conscious being, and because inert objects are also acknowledged as sometimes exhibiting agency due to the presence of the indwelling supreme consciousness, in accordance with the statement, without whom nothing is accomplished, it is concluded that agency ensues only from the pure, i.e., only from the individual or from the supreme consciousness. Thus it is said, being infused with whose conscious portion the body, senses, vital force, mind, and intellect perform their respective functions. So Jiva is making it clear here that this agency is a common characteristic of both the individual self and the supreme self. And that without that self existing for the jiva within a specific body, or within, by permeating all of material nature, as in the sense of the Paramātmā is animating all of material nature, without this specific characteristic, there would be no action within a material cosmos, within the external energy. So we will continue in our next discussion with the last of these characteristics, the experiential capacity, and then continue on to look a little bit more deeply through the perspective of the Paramātmā Sandarbha at the Bahiranga Shakti and its two primary manifestations. And that will give us a general overview of what Jiva has given us in Paramātmā Sandarbha. And if we finish up with this one additional class, then we will enter into our in-depth study of the Krishna Sandarbha, either 1 or 2 weeks from today. If anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to do my best to answer them. And if there are no questions, I will sincerely thank you for your kind association and attention to this wonderful presentation of Śrī Jīva Goswami. Panchakalpadubhischa, kripasindhabheva, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavijyo namo namaha.
Shriman Dulal Chandra Prabhu ki jai.
Kirtan gāna tan pano premamritam manidhi dhīra dhīra jana priyau priyakarau nirmasanau pujitau
Jai, Jai Prabhu.
Śrī Chaitanya Kripa Bharao Bhuvi Bhuva Bharavahantarakam Vande Rupa Sanatana